Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the new episode of the Comeback Sports Podcast. I'm your host, AJ, and this is Season 2, Episode 1. We got a jam-filled packed episode as usual. We'll be talking about the Bulls and how they're doing this season, the AFC, NFC, NFL Championship games that happened over the weekend, my Super Bowl prediction, and then some recent track news I would like to cover. So stick around and we will get to that. Now for your quote of the week. To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. What does that quote mean to me? Well, it just simply means, like, what's the point of doing something if you're not going to give it your all? I mean, some of us are blessed with abilities or just they can do everyday normal things, and we sometimes take it for granted. And we just need to utilize our strengths as much as we can, because some people don't have these things that we have. Some people can't walk. Some people have speech problems. So sure, I mean, it's easy to kind of take these simple things for granted, but you just got to know that not all these people have those things. And it's same with your talents. Some people are very good at sports, and then they compete. They're not giving it their all. So that's kind of how I look at it. Wow, it has been a long break, but a good break, I think. I definitely feel a little more refreshed and kind of ready to just kind of keep this show going. Had a nice little Christmas break and New Year's, and been busy with work. And I got some cool new stuff. I got an extra microphone, so when I get guests on, they'll be able to have their own microphone. I got a ring light for extra lighting just to make it a little bit better. It's on right now. Hopefully you can see my beautiful face a little easier now. And I've been doing some cool edits and some new projects I've already been working on. Things have been going pretty well. I'm excited what's going to be happening next for this show. So let's kind of get right to it, and we'll talk about the Bulls. So, I want to talk about the Bulls because, one, I'm a big Bulls fan. And I live in the city of Chicago. Well, technically in the area of Chicago, and so the Bulls kind of are a team that I follow closely with, especially when the NBA's around. So I watched the Rockets game and the Hornets game. They'll play the Lakers in a couple of days. By the time this comes out, they'll already play them. And kind of just what I saw in the Rockets game is, they look really good in the first quarter of the game. They only allowed 16 points on the defensive side of the ball and even look good offensively. But after that one quarter, they just allowed more and more points, 30-plus points each quarter after. And it definitely didn't help that they had 17 turnovers in the process. Lauri Markkanen, one of the Bulls players, I'm a big fan of him. I've been following him since his rookie year. Tall, 7-foot dude that can shoot threes, so that's really cool. But he needs to attack the rim more and use his big size. I mean, he's gotten bigger and bulkier since his rookie year, which was 2-3 years ago almost. And his defense is slowly getting better too, so that's a good thing. But I just want to see him attack the rim more and use that size to just get to the basket. I don't like that they just use him as sit in the perimeter and just catch and shoot. I just feel like he can be utilized in a different way. Ryan Arcidiacono, he's more of a role player. He came from Villanova, and he's not doing too bad. He's pretty efficient. His plus minus is pretty consistent. He doesn't play too many minutes because he's just not as naturally athletic as the other guys are starting. But in that game, he had a couple of good threes, and he just played a good role from the bench. His plus minus was +9. And if you don't know what plus minus is, it's kind of like the score of how well you are productive on the field. Most cases, if you're usually under if you're not making any points or you're allowing the team get the score on you a lot. And usually up when you're getting a lot of points and you're also defensively keeping the ball from scoring from the other side. So I think it's a decent metric. Sometimes it's just nice to kind of get an overall picture of how well they play. But he's pretty efficient. As I mentioned, his plus minus was good that game. Then watching the Hornets game, I really like this game. Hornets aren't like a super team, nothing like that, but it's a good matchup, I think. They're both kind of on the same level of talent. But the Bulls outscored them in every quarter, and most fourth quarters, I always get nervous for the Bulls because usually that's when they kind of fall apart or allow a lot of points, even if they're ahead or behind. But this time they held them to 27 points. That was the second best quarter of the game. So I was quite impressed. They essentially just D'd up. And so far this year, I just kind of want to get my analysis of what I've seen with the Bulls through their first 15 games. The Bulls are notorious for turnovers. They are in the top 3, but in terms of forcing turnovers, they're in the top 15. So they're the better half of forcing turnovers in the league. When the Bulls have less turnovers than their opponent, they are 8-2. So minimizing these turnovers plays a huge role in their overall success. Everyone probably knows that the Bulls are top 5 in offense. They're just an offensive juggernaut, man. Zach LaVine is crushing it. Laurie can crush it. Kobe White can crush it sometimes. Wendell Carter. But right now, they're 26 in offensive rebounds, and I think they can improve that a little bit just to get all those second chance opportunities to score. I mean, if they're top 5 right now, and they're not utilizing that, who knows how much better they could be if they can get those offensive rebounds. Even though the defense is their weakest trait, they're good at one thing: defensive rebounds. Right now, they're 10th in the league, and that's kind of thanks to Laurie and Wendell Carter, since they lead that team in stats. So I think if they can continue that, and then the other defensive things can improve, we'll be in a positive trend. This year, they drafted a rookie from Florida State, Patrick Williams. And I was a little skeptical of the pick at first, but I mentioned in my previous episodes that his role is a little different than what you expect. It's more of being a 6-man role player and focusing on defense. And he's been stepping up. Billy Donovan has been pretty much telling him hey, we're playing this team. You're going to guard the best player on the team, which I think is a good idea. It's just kind of helping him progress and kind of get over that learning curve. If he can take on these top guys like Giannis ahead of time, and then who knows how much better he can be taking on kind of the lower players on these teams. He's having a good start, I think. He's very calculated in his shooting. He doesn't take too many threes. He averages about a little over 2, but he's 50% when he shoots. So I think he's very calculated, and he thinks of the best opportunities to make his shots. I kind of want to talk about other ways that the Bulls can really improve their game. As I mentioned, I'm a big fan of Laurie, but an aggressive Laurie is a good Laurie. He needs to drive to the lane more. When he goes to the rim or makes 2-point attempts, he's 56%, which is a pretty decent number when you're going into the paint. And I think how this could work out is if maybe he should play the 5 a little bit more. He's a shooting guard most cases. Maybe can get the load off of Wendell Carter by playing the 5 a little bit more, especially in small ball teams that don't have that height advantage. And that gives him more opportunity to, get some more rebounds along with getting some dunks or any sort of ways to get easy points. People probably will disagree with me on this, but I think Zach LaVine is kind of a liability on the court. It's really hard to say that because he's top 5 in the league in points per game, and he has a strong case to be an all-star. He's an offensive juggernaut, man. He has incredible hops. He can just jump over anybody and dunk from any part of the court. However, overall, he's second in the entire league in turnovers. He's just not very efficient at protecting the ball. Every 36 minutes Zach plays, he averages more than 27 points, which is great, but he averages more than 4 turnovers. I think the best way to kind of minimize this problem is just kind of distribute the ball a bit more. What I've noticed is most games we lose, it's usually Zach getting 30-plus points a game. But when the ball is more even, we get more people that get that are in the double digits in points. I just see a little bit more efficiency, and they win a little bit more. So I think just having the ball distributed to other players, and it's just an easier way to kind of fix this little problem. I'm not saying he needs to just not have the ball in his hands at all, just a little bit more to the other players, and I think we'll see some progression. And here's something that I think would improve the overall defense of the team. Playing Daniel Gafford a little more would definitely help. Right now, he's averaging 14 minutes a game. He's most likely in the bench when he comes. But he leads the team in blocks and has the highest defensive efficiency. And he only averages half a turnover per game. That's the best overall on the team. And just giving him a little bit more playing time, I think that will help on the defensive side of the field. I'm not saying he should be a starter, but just a couple more minutes per game, and I think we'll see some progression on the defensive side. So, yeah, I'm real excited for these Bulls, actually. I mean, in terms of, like, year over year, within the first 15 games of last year, they were 5-10. Now they're 7-8, which isn't a big difference, but it's progression. And I think we're on the right path, and I can definitely see this going to be a much better season. Hopefully they can keep it up because as of now, they're in a 3-game win streak before playing the Lakers. I'm just going to assume they're going to lose to the Lakers. And, yeah, I mean, they can keep these streaks alive and do it more often. I could see a chance making the playoffs. They can be an 8, barely missing, and be a 9. So I'm excited to see what these Bulls have. So I want to jump right in and talk about indoor track. So just a couple things of sophomore in high school. Erriyon Knighton goes pro to Nike. He's only 16 years old. He's going to be 17 later this month. I believe that this week. He'd be 17 this week. I mean, he's known to just have a monstrous long stride, and he recently ran a 23.3 in the 200. That's 22nd. That's a 22nd 200, making him the number 2 among sprinters ever under 18. As I mentioned, he's only 16. And then we had another breakout performance from Juliette Whittaker, who ran the 800. So she's also in high school, and she ran a 2:02 800. That's incredible. I mean, most high school boys can't even do that. And to put that in perspective, that time is number 3 in all time in high school. I mean, it's crazy. It's the third fastest indoor time by a high school ever in this event. And to put it in more perspective, this time also meets the USA Track and Field Olympic Trials qualifying standard. So she's eligible to compete, to try out for the Olympic team. That's crazy. And she's only, I think, 17. She's a high schooler. And I think later that week, or maybe that same meet, she joined other 3 girls, and they put together a relay, a 4x800 relay, where each runner all runs an 800, and they pass baton to the next person and do that 3 times. And together they set an under 20 record, meaning this record is within girls or boys, whoever, girls in this case, that are under the age of 20. They set a record of 8:37. That's an average of 2:09 per runner. I'm sure her performance in that race definitely played a huge factor. I'm not saying these girls are scrubs. They're all great, in my opinion. I just think she definitely was one of the reasons that they broke the record. I mean, just back to Whittaker's individual performance, this time has beaten great runners that were around her age, and one of them includes A.J. Wilson, who's an Olympian runner and all world class. And Whittaker's time almost was pretty close to the number 1 overtime for high school girls. This was held by Simi Watson. Watson held a time of 2:01.78. As I mentioned, Whittaker ran a 2:02.07. So that big of a difference. So it's crazy. I'm excited to see what both these girls and guys can do. So I mentioned these young high schoolers breaking records and going pro, and that makes me think, like, do these young runners that go pro early, they skip college, they forgo the rest of their high school eligibility, does that kind of bring them to a path of burning out really early versus people that go pro after college? And I think it all depends on coaching. There are some good coaches that can produce great college and young adult runners, but their methodology or their workout plans just probably won't translate well to teenagers that are constantly growing. They're mentally not the same level as adults, and physically they're not. And also, I think their high school coaches kind of prepare them for this burnout sometime. They see these great runners when they're freshmen or middle schoolers, and they think, wow, they have great potential. But I want to get to that potential even quicker. And in that process, I think it just leads them to progressing so fastly that it leads to that burnout by the time they're out of high school. And sometimes they kind of disappear and they go to college or they go pro. I think they're just so eager to get them to the national level because they think that they're tapping their potential, but they're just not doing it the most efficient way possible. And the sport of running is a little different when it comes to professionalism. Performance is either consistent or harder to improve in time because it's a very individualistic sport. And it's very normal for runners to have off races, or it takes a lot of time to beat their PRs, especially if they're coming off an injury. It's not like you're just going to come off an injury and be exactly where you're at. It takes time. And most cases, like, you don't really see like back-to-back like national champions because there's always great runners that just come out of nowhere, or sometimes runners just don't always run consistently. And in terms of like financially, money varies. I think you don't get paid the same way, for different events. And I think you kind of maximize your money or your revenue when you win races, especially marathon runners, because you can get like six figures just winning one race. And so like you got to depend on winning races to get you money rather than just salary that your sponsorships or your contracts give you. So it's a little stressful, I think, for runners. It's pressuring. And when I think about it, back then I think runners burned out quicker, young runners, I mean. But now we have more scientific research that makes all athletes from every sport stronger and better. We have coaches, trainers, doctors that use new techniques and practices to maximize performance and do it in a more gradual way. But it all goes down to the coach. I just think it depends your coach's outlook. Are they looking out for themselves for a quick payday to get you to win races right away? Or are they thinking as in grooming you to make it in the long run? So I think it mostly comes down to the coaching that's going to determine your success if you were to go pro right out of high school or during high school. And it's like this is my first time talking about the sport of track. It's just very hard because there's just not too much coverage on it. So I don't really see too much unless I go to certain websites. And sometimes like it's hard to just find articles or information because you got to pay for it, like Flow Track or Mile Split. I got to think, is there a way to kind of improve this coverage? I think the main reason is there's just not a lot of interest and revenue behind covering the sport. This sport cannot compete with others like the NFL, the NBA, NHL, all these other sports internationally. It's just not profitable. And Flow Track, they had to depend on subscriptions for profit, even if it means it's just a simple article read or like a 2-minute video of someone competing. I think one way to solve this is maybe just testing new avenues, just doing new events to improve the coverage. If what we're doing right now isn't working, why not try something different? And I've been informed that they are doing the American Track League, and it's a track series on TV on ESPN, and it's a 4-meet tour of indoor elite track running. I guess what's the difference between the normal track races we see on TV? This has a couple twists. Example, they have the knockout event. The knockout event you have head-to-head matchup heats, and in those matchups, you're only racing into one person. When they get to the finals, fans online, like social media, they can vote for someone that's been eliminated to come back and race in the finals, which is kind of neat. Social media fans can submit questions for commentators to ask the athletes. So, like, let's say I want to ask them, what are your thoughts on this? The commentators will read my question if they can get to it, and they'll ask the athlete themselves, which is kind of neat. It just kind of brings more engagement by using social media to like take advantage of that. So I'm curious. I'm gonna watch it this weekend, and maybe I'll talk about it on my next show. And this kind of reminds me of the XFL, but here's the difference. These two events, normal track running and then this American Track League, they're not competing against each other, helping each other. They're trying to improve the coverage of the sport. It's just trying to help. As I mentioned, if something's currently not working, why not try something else? So, yeah, I'm excited for this. I don't expect it to be a breakout thing. It's going to it's going to work overnight. It's going to take time. And this is the first step of making the improvement. Before I get to the NFL games, I did watch some UFC fighting over the weekend. Conor McGregor faced Dustin Poirier for the UFC matchup on Saturday night. I'm not a huge MMA guy per se, but I was just curious because I wanted to see what the hype was about. Conor McGregor is probably one of the most prolific fighters in history, just because he has that flair and he likes to shit talk and just get everybody riled up. It ended in the second round. I thought McGregor was pretty good. He didn't really seem too threatened by Dustin, but I guess I was wrong. He just didn't really seem in the exact shape he used to be, and he ended up getting a technical knockout and lost. I kind of noticed this. I seen one other fight after that Floyd Mayweather matchup in 2017. I don't know. I feel like ever since he won that big payday losing to Floyd, he just hasn't been the same. And I understand that because some of these fighters, they fight to survive because this is how they make their living. And MMA is definitely a lot more rugged and less pain than boxing. But he says he's still going to fight, and I'll see what he has going. Let's see what he has left in the tank. So let's get started with the NFC and AFC championship games. I'm going to start with the AFC game, which was the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought it was a pretty interesting matchup. It's two quarterbacks who I think will be the future of the NFL. Big, strong arm guys. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. In the first couple drives, Allen looked pretty comfortable, and then he got sacked, which resulted in a 10-plus yard sack. And I think that was why he got a little too comfortable, and he just wanted to hold on the ball, and he just refused to throw it away. He tried to play hero ball. Pay attention to that works. I'm probably going to say it a lot for this episode. The following return, the Chiefs had a costly return where they dropped it, and the Bills got it back on the 3-yard line, and then Josh Allen got it done by throwing a TD pass for that, and it started to become an interesting game. But then the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes remembered, oh, yeah, we're playing football, and they sped up the tempo of the game and just started pounding away and even made a forced down risk to get the TD to put them back in. So I was interested to see how this is going to play out. Mecole Hardman had a huge run and put them in a big scoring position. That definitely made up for that costly return that he dropped for the Bills TD. Once again, Allen was just making it more difficult for himself. He would just make tough throws that just weren't very necessary under tight coverages and people that were just making it very difficult for him when there's easier options available right in front of him in the shorter passes. And I think he just gets a little anxious and impatient. I mean, Mahomes and Travis Kelce is probably one of the most unstoppable quarterback to tight end duo, maybe even quarterback to receiver duo. And Allen and Diggs is great too, since Diggs had the most receptions this season. But Kelce's just unstoppable with Mahomes. Josh's O-line, I want to make mention, is incredible, and they give him so much time because their scheme is usually 6 to 7 men up front to protect him, which I think can explain why he's so eager to make those deep throws. And he thinks, well, I got all this time, I might as well just kind of make more throws out deep instead of just these easy ones if I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. But Allen, I want to say, he's probably one of the most, physically gifted quarterbacks I've seen in recent history. I mean, he has the size, athleticism. He has probably one of the best arms in the NFL right now, and he can rely on his legs. In the game, he had a 17-yard run play, and then later in the game, he had an 18-yarder. He just really knows to use his legs. I used to make fun of him because I just thought he was just real careless, but he's gotten so much better at using them. But speaking of legs, we need to talk about Tyreek Hill from Kansas City. He is ridiculously fast. His acceleration is unbelievable. Once he gets that ball from Mahomes, he's just off. He's gone. It's so hard to cover him. He had a 71-yard catch with plenty of missed tackles. He's just untouchable. Kelce had a TD shovel pass from Mahomes at the red zone, and him and Mahomes do this little shovel pass plenty of times in the regular season. I'm surprised the Bills didn't catch on and were looking out for it. Or maybe they knew it was going to happen, but they just couldn't stop him. And speaking of Kelce and Hill, they're actually the first receiver duo in postseason history to both have 100-plus yard games together. That's crazy. And Tyreek Hill almost had 200 that game. Late in the third quarter, Bills were down by 16, and Allen was still making those tough deep throws. One got double contested when he was trying to throw it to Diggs. In the fourth quarter, Josh did make some adjustments, and he kind of threw some more shorter throws and used his legs again. But even though they were shorter, they were still pretty tough and unnecessary throws, which you get it. I get it, man. He's just trying to make the best of what he has, and Chiefs D is just really that good. Jordan Poirier from the Bills seemed to be the only person that was able to somewhat cover or contain Tyreek Hill, but it still wasn't enough. Hill was just too much for him. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Josh Allen likes to use his legs, and believe it or not, he had the second most running attempts of both sides of the team. I mean, if the run game is working, why don't you give it to Singletary or some other running backs to move the run game along, if that's where you're seeing the most success, because they weren't getting much from the pass game. I mean, Chiefs defense normally does not play this well. They have this weird thing where the regular season, the offense just carries them. But then the postseason happens, just a complete turnaround. Chiefs D just becomes so much better, and I think defenses in the playoffs are way more valuable than offenses in the playoffs, and that's how they get to Super Bowls. So I just think defenses are what gets them to Super Bowls, for not just for the Chiefs but other teams as well. I mean, just ask the New England Patriots. I mean, they're for the longest time on the second half they would only allow 9 points per. So the game was over. The Chiefs beat the Bills 24-38, and the Chiefs were going to Super Bowl again. They went last year and they won it. Without Mahomes, Chiefs are still an unstoppable team. The Browns game the week before, they put in Chad Henne when Mahomes was hurt for the rest of the game, and shout out to him. He put the team in his back and still was able to get the win. So, in the words of Mahomes, anything is possible. One way to beat the Chiefs is just taking the risk. Going on it for fourth down is the best thing you can do. The Raiders did it. They gambled. They went for the fourth down attempts, and that's how the Raiders beat them the first round, the first matchup of the year. And Bills were actually pretty successful in fourth down conversions. They were 2 for 2 that game. Maybe if they would have done more of it, they probably would have had a better chance. Before this game, Chiefs have only won by 6 points within the last 2 months. But this game was almost a slaughter, and I think a lot of it had to do with that turnaround with the Chiefs' defense. Josh Allen is usually pretty strong against the blitz because, as I mentioned, his line is full of people to protect him. They give him like an average of 3 seconds or more to throw, but the hero ball just did not work this time, and that's what ultimately led to their demise. The Chiefs played the Bills earlier this year, and that they won because they would cover heavily in the back, taking away Josh's, strength, and then that's how they kind of got him that time. And I think the same thing kind of happened, but even then, at the shorter throws, they're still covering pretty heavy when Josh was going to throw to them. And I can't blame the Bills for being beaten too much on the first matchup because Josh Allen had a lingering shoulder injury and there were a couple missing players. But yeah, this was a loss of the game. It was just lack of adjustment. And Josh Allen just making a lot of unnecessary throws. I mean, the big reason was the offensive struggle from that, and the Chiefs are just they're just in playoff mode, man. They know what they're doing, and they just find ways to make things happen. In the Super Bowl game, Mahomes has to be careful though. He does this thing where he's in the shotgun. He takes multiple steps back than normal, so leaves him more vulnerable, and the O-line can't protect this vulnerability if he's too far back. So he has to be careful of that, and just keep an eye on what's out there. So let's get to the Packers versus the Bucs game. Let's kind of just address the elephant in the room. It's very clear that I'm a Packers fan. Aaron Rodgers is right on my wall. And I even have his jersey. And you know what? Even though I know the outcome of this game, I'm still gonna put it on. Why not? Jesus Christ! All right. Hopefully my mic is not screwed up right now since I just tilt it. But let's just start from the beginning. Right off the bat, the Bucs took advantage of Evans' size, and he got a couple big yard plays, including a TD. I mean, slowing him down at the start isn't going to work. He's just way too big, and he'll push you right back without even slowing down one bit. First drive for the Packers was definitely pretty slow. The run game couldn't really get much, but you have to remember the Bucs are number one in rush defense, so that just wasn't working. And Rodgers was going to make a throw to Davante Adams on the third down, but it was just a little too late. He left the pocket, and he got sacked from behind. But either way, I think the O-line still looked better than it was the first matchup against the Bucs on Week 6. Jair Alexander had a mismatch with Evans, and I think he was just more effective when he was paired up with Chris Godwin, because, as I mentioned, Evans' size is just way too much. Eventually, the Packers did get a TD. Rodgers threw a tight window pass to Marquez Valdes-Scantling for a TD, which helped build momentum, and the Packers' defense was looking a little bit more cleaner ever since that TD pass. I have to remember, I sometimes make fun of MVS because he drops a lot of balls, but he's one of the best deep ball threats. He averages 20-plus yards per catch. But back to the defense, I said it looked cleaner, but I only meant the run D. Sullivan and Savage were just letting Godwin and Evans get loose. And even Leonard Fournette was got a TD off of some bad defense. And let's talk about Kevin King. Kevin King was literally leaving everybody wide open. It was just, here, you get a catch, you get a catch. He was just making things very difficult. But Packers are great offensively because they seize every red zone opportunity. They are number one in red zone TDs. However, the Bucs were even giving them a hard time, so they just seemed like they just weren't catching their stride for a bit. Before half, the Bucs are very aggressive on their last drive, which I think was a very key defining moment that defined this game. The Bucs had about 13 seconds to go, and it was fourth down. Instead of punting, they went for it. Brady threw a pass to Scotty Miller for a 21-10 lead at halftime, which was huge. And, of course, Kevin King allowed them to have that touchdown. It was very discouraging if you're a Packers fan. On the possession before the Bucs made that TD pass, Rodgers should have not made that last throw. It was just way too deep of a throw for nothing, and the best you could get out of it was maybe a field goal. Instead, I think it was an interception. A simple screen pass would have just killed the clock and kept the game a 4-point game versus an 11-point game. As I mentioned, it got picked off. So that was on Rodgers' fault on that. Even in the beginning of the third quarter, Rodgers was struggling and Davante Adams was feeling frustrated. He wasn't playing up to his standard. But once they got to the red zone, they started to get their feel back and got that TD. Adrian Amos had a huge third quarter interception, which was the first interception for Brady. It was a ball that was meant to go deep to Mike Evans. Packers made adjustments, and A.J. Dillon was in the mix as running back because Aaron Jones was out for the rest of the game, and he was getting some yards, and they were getting some easy passes to stay alive. Davante got to the red zone and got a TD. Fortunately, the Packers missed their 2-point conversion. So right now it's a 5-point game. But then this was probably one of my favorite moments. A game-defining moment was an interception from Jair Alexander, who I think is one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He's just great. He did it against Scotty Miller. So yeah, take some notes, Kevin King, because that's how you do it. However, Bucs' defensive pressure was too much for Rodgers and the Packers after that interception, so no points off that turnover. But then Alexander did it again. He picked off Tom Brady for his third interception. Rodgers threw a third down play to Allen Lazard, but no luck from there. Rodgers definitely was not playing how he normally would in these situations. I want to talk about Tom Brady being a gunslinger in the fourth quarter. Depending on where he's at in the game, he's either extremely bad or extremely great in the fourth quarter. He's completely reckless when he's in catch-up mode, which kind of what he was feeling, which I think that's what had to do with the back-to-back interceptions. Okay, I'm sure everybody remembers this drive. It was the Packers' final drive with just a little over 2 minutes to go. They were in the red zone. It was 3rd and goal, and Rodgers was going to throw it to Davante Adams, but he threw it to him, and Davante Adams missed it at the end zone. So they did a field goal. So it was now 31 and 26. Bucs still up with 2 minutes left. Rodgers made a tough call throwing it to Adams, and I honestly think he could have ran it, but there's more to it than that. Rodgers didn't make the run to the end zone because he thought there was going to be an attempt at 4th down. He had no idea that Matt LaFleur was going to make them kick a field goal. And I understand why Matt did that, because in his mind, he still has over 2 minutes to go, so that's an extra timeout. But you have Aaron Rodgers, who's going to be the league MVP pretty soon, and it is a game-defining moment. You don't give Tom Brady the ball back with 2 minutes left. He's going to kill the clock, and you're going to regret it. It's just not the best call, in my opinion. But I understand why he did it, because before this game, the Packers were number 1 in red zone offense, but they were struggling at that in this game. So I can see why he got scared, but I just didn't think that was the right call. Then the Bucs got the ball back, and there was another chance. It was 3rd down, and there was a pass got stopped, and that gave the Packers a chance to get the ball back with just a minute to go. However, the refs called a pass interference call, which I thought was a bullshit call. I mean, they didn't do an Allen Lazard should have got that pass interference, and that also resulted in an interception. I just didn't think that was the right call, and if you're going to be consistent about it, you should have made that call when Allen Lazard got stopped. I mean, in all fairness, I hate to say this, but the refs did help out in this and the Bucs' chance to the Super Bowl. Before I don't want to get my feelings involved too much, because last time I talked about this matchup in Week 6, I just feel like I was being very one-sided. Rodgers needed to distribute the ball more. He threw it to Davante Adams 15 times, and last time he played against the Bucs, those targets were 2 interceptions. And Davante Adams wasn't having a game to his standards. I think he could distribute a little bit more. I still like the Packers O-line. They were great. And what makes Rodgers so great in the pocket is when you try to attack him or try to pressure on him, you got to do it to minimize time, because he can extend plays and make anything happen. He is so calculated. He can predict how many steps he has left before it's too late to throw. It's ridiculous. He did it. He mentioned this on the Pat McAfee show when he was talking about the Rams game. And honestly, that's what the Bucs did to him again, and that's what made it so tough for him, was they minimized the time he had to throw. I'm proud of the Packers defense. They didn't really perform as well as I wanted to the first half, and they showed up in the last half. And I want to commemorate Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They played great as wide receivers for the Bucs. Tom Brady didn't play great in the second half, but he did something right. He capitalized on turnovers, and that's what mattered most, and he made that very risky but game-defining touchdown before half. And then the Packers, when they got opportunities from those turnovers, thanks to Alexander, they didn't capitalize. I mean, people can say that Rodgers made it this far because he had great wide receivers, healthy O-line, and an easy divisional path. But people were saying Rodgers that he wasn't going to be this great. But he had a career year. And I've seen interviews and kind of watch him and how he presents himself this year. He's completely different. He learned to work on himself in the offseason, focus on himself, and ultimately learn to love himself. He goes in great detail about it. I mean, he's squatting more. He's getting stronger. He's learning the game more. He says he feels more rested and conditioned and just in a better mindset compared to previous years. It's very easy for him to have a negative mindset because they drafted his replacement and didn't get him any help that he wanted in the draft. Instead of looking at it negatively, he just said, My job is to win games. And that's what he did. He won games and didn't let it get to him. He's built a better chemistry with his teammates. He praises them. He doesn't point fingers like people claims he does. And they even think he's the GOAT. He says great things about Devontae Adams, Allen Lazard, all these guys, A.J. Dillon. He's just, like I said, he's just in a better mindset, and he's learning to build that chemistry with his teammates, and as a result, they won games together. He says his future is uncertain with the Packers, but whatever he does, I support his decision, and I'll be a fan of him and the Packers. It's easy to get mad about this game. I'm not disappointed in them. I'm very hurt by this result this game, but I'm also just, I'm just upset. That's the best way to describe it. I could go on and say the refs stole the game, but the end result is the Packers just didn't perform to their standard. They had opportunity, but I like that they still fought. It was just a miscommunication on that final drive, and the Packers still tried, and that's all I can ask. I mean, I congratulate Tom Brady and the Bucs. It's very hard to get to a Super Bowl, and I want to say, like, Aaron Rodgers played more efficient than Tom, but Tom played better. That's why he won. So just this is how I'll wrap up the show. Unfortunately, I didn't want it to be like this for my first episode back, but it's sports. You can never predict what's going to happen. All you can do is just enjoy the moment and just, it's sports. These things are going to happen. But I'm glad I was able to get back into the groove and start podcasting again. I'm so excited. I've learned to be more efficient with this process. I learned to post my videos more quickly and also convert them to audio so you can find them on Spotify and Apple Music. So I'll be having those links in the description. It's gonna get bigger. I got a feeling that this will still be fun for me. I'll still watch, kind of be careful in how I time management. I don't want to burn myself out because I want to keep doing this continuously. So thanks for everybody for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you guys soon.